Hello Year 4s and welcome to your next computing lesson. In the previous lesson, we started looking at online safety and what you would need to do to keep yourself safe. Today's lesson is going to focus on something called peer pressure. Say that with me, peer pressure, peer pressure. So we're going to discuss what peer pressure is, and we're also going to discuss that whether it can be positive or negative, or whether it can be both. Before we go on, I want you to think about what the word peer pressure means. So pause the video and give it a think. Do you know what the word peer means? And do you know what the word pressure means? And then when we put them together, what do the words peer pressure talk about? What do they mean? So give it a think. If you're unsure and you have somebody you can ask an adult what they would say peer pressure is, and then write down a little definition for yourself. Now, peer pressure is when people you know encourage you to do something even if you don't want to. So they are pressuring you, which is another way of saying they are pushing you to do something that you don't necessarily want to do. Now, we will discuss it a little bit later, but peer pressure can be both positive and negative. So peer pressure can sometimes be a good thing, but often it can be a bad thing. So it's usually when someone just says that you need to do something and you'll sometimes maybe feel silly about doing it and you don't really want to do it. It makes you feel uncomfortable to do it. So we're going to share a short clip with you of a few things that other people have to say about peer pressure.
When somebody makes you feel like you have to do something that
Okay, that was just a few people sharing what peer pressure is. So when they are asking you to do something that you maybe don't want to do or feel uncomfortable doing, and sometimes it can lead you into a bit of trouble. So we're going to talk more about peer pressure online, and I'm going to give you an example. So I want you to imagine two friends called Ruby and Jazz. Now, this lady here, this girl here, is the one, and then this one here, this is Jazz, and this is Ruby. So let's have a read of this. I sent a quick snap picture to Jazz last night. I don't know who made it, but it was hilarious. Jazz didn't reply, which was pretty annoying. She's supposed to be my best friend. What's the matter with her? So before we go on, I want you to think about some of the reasons Jazz maybe didn't respond straight away. So Ruby sent this to her in the evening. She's also sent on something that Ruby herself, she found funny, but she doesn't know where it's come from. So give it a pause and think, why didn't Jazz respond straight away? Right, we have a response from Jazz. And Jazz said, Ruby was really weird at school today. She wouldn't talk to me and had lunch with other girls in our class. She told me it wasn't fair that I didn't respond to the quick snap because we were best friends. So Ruby is making Jazz feel really bad about not responding in the evening and not responding to her message. We then get more of the story from Ruby's mum and Jazz's foster dad. So he says, In our house, we switch off all our devices by 8 p.m. It's our family rule. We all do it. So now you can already see why Jazz didn't reply. It wasn't that she was being mean to Ruby or just didn't want, it was being rude. She wasn't, that was just a rule in their house, is that nobody had an electronic device after 8 p.m. Ruby's mum says we don't have any rules for the use of devices in our house. So her rules in her house are very different from Jazz's rules in Jazz's house. So I want you to think what Jazz feels and what Ruby feels. So Ruby is now ignoring Jazz and making her feel really bad. She's putting pressure on her to actually respond and respond to a message when Jazz's house rules say that she shouldn't be on a device after 8 p.m. and that applies for the whole family. Ruby's house is different, and she doesn't understand why Jazz's won't reply. So with that in mind, I want you to think, what is a definition of peer pressure? Can you give an example of it? Think back to the slides that we have. Is anyone applying peer pressure? Is someone being pressured to do something that they maybe don't want to do? If so, who's applying peer pressure and what effect does it have? So give that a think. And your last challenge is to pretend to be Jazz and write a diary entry, which we should all remember how to do, of how she feels about Ruby's actions. How do you think Jazz feels about what Ruby has done? Now, we've focused a lot on peer pressure being negative. It can, however, be a positive thing as well. And we can see this picture of 3 little ducks here, and it says, you can do it, keep trying. So these little ducks are trying to help the other duckling get up onto a little ledge. So peer pressure can be positive. You can see that, like I said, they're helping each other up. So you can push your friends to be better or to try harder. And that's not a negative thing, especially if you are all doing it together and you say, come on, we'll do it with you. Let's all try our best with making sure that we all have our neat handwriting, making sure that we put our hands up in class. That's not a negative thing. That's actually trying to help them to be better or yourselves to be better. So like I said, you can have positive peer pressure. So what I would like you to do is the following. Answer the 3 questions or your 3 challenges that you've got and upload them on Tapestry. I'd love to see your examples of your negative peer pressure or what peer pressure can be. I'd also be happy for you to give me a positive peer pressure, something that someone helped you to do or supported you to do that was positive. Make sure to upload this onto Tapestry. I'd really love to see your work.